A new true book, Space. This book was written by Isla Podendorf, and it was written back in 1982. It was revised. Let's see what has changed since 1982. Where is space? When we look into the sky, we look into space. The sky is the biggest space that we know anything about. All of the spaces around us have air in them. There is air in every crack and hole in this earth, on this earth. There is air in the ground and in the water. When we look into the sky, we look into air. We cannot see air. Air has no color. We can feel air when the wind blows. Wind is moving air. There is air inside of us too. When we take a deep breath, we take air into the little spaces in our lungs. We cannot live without air. What is outer space? Outer space stretches out in all directions beyond the earth. This space probably has very little in it. Scientists think that it has no air of the kind we know in it. This faraway space is so big that a trip into it would last longer than we could imagine if we traveled at the speeds we know on Earth. This satellite, called Landsat, was designed to study the Earth's natural resources. Huge sections of land can be seen from the satellite in orbit around the Earth. We have many satellites in the space. Right now, no one knows how far away outer space goes. We can see some things in outer space. We can see the moon, sun, planets, and faraway stars. The Voyager spacecraft took photographs of Saturn and its rings, right there. From them, an artist drew this picture of the Saturn system. We can see a meteor when it comes into the Earth's air. A meteor is a piece of a kind of rock from outer space. It burns up from heat made by rubbing against bits of air. We call it a shooting star. The moon is closer to the Earth than the sun or any of the planets. There's the moon, and there's the Earth. Some of the planets are closer to the Earth than the sun is. There's Mercury and Venus. Some planets are farther from the Earth than the sun is. There's Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. The stars are much farther away than the moon, the sun, and the planets. Earth as seen from outer space. Outer space seems to have no end to it. The space close to the Earth that has air in it is much smaller than the faraway outer space. How do we travel in space with air in it? There are many ways to travel in space that has air in it. Scientists keep finding better ways for us to travel. They invented the steam engine, and people began to travel in boats and trains. That's a Model T Ford, 1913. A few years later, scientists invented the gasoline engine. Some engines can burn other fuels besides gasoline. Some engines burn oil. But all of these engines must have oxygen from the air to help the fuels burn. The gasoline engine made it possible for airplanes to have power enough to fly. Scientists worked to build better engines and faster airplanes. Spirit of St. Louis in 1927, Charles Lindbergh became the first man to fly alone across the Atlantic Ocean without stopping. And in 1947, the Bell X-1, named Glamorous Glennis, was the first piloted jet to travel faster than the speed of sound. That's in 1947. Much has happened since then. Jet planes do not work in the same way that planes with gasoline engines and propellers work, but they too must have oxygen to burn their fuels. All planes need air to give oxygen to the motors. They also need air flowing over the wings to hold them up. The air that we travel through in trains, cars, boats, and planes is close to the earth. There's the air going under the wing and over the wing, which creates a lift. How do we travel in outer space? The Space Shuttle Columbia lifts off on its second space mission. As you know, scientists have found some ways to travel in outer space, space that does not have air in it. A rocket that can go into outer space has been invented. A rocket carries its own oxygen and fuel with it. Rockets can travel several miles in 1 second. This is much faster than a jet plane can go. But when a rocket ship runs out of fuel or oxygen in outer space, there is no way to get more. Scientists have made 1, 2, 3, and 4-stage rockets. Each stage carries the oxygen or fuel it needs. The first stage of the Saturn V rocket. One of the rockets starts the ship into space. When it runs out of fuel, it falls away, like these. The second rocket takes over and sends the ship farther. After the second rocket falls away, the third one sends the ship still further, and so on. Once the ship is beyond the air of the Earth, it can keep going without any fuel. There is no air to push against it and to slow down its speed. It may move into an orbit and circle the Earth. It may become a satellite. What is a satellite? A satellite is a follower. It follows something bigger and greater than it is. The Earth has a satellite. It is called the moon. The moon follows the Earth as the Earth travels around the sun. The moon moves around the Earth in a path called an orbit. The moon stays in its orbit because the pull of the Earth keeps it there. Rockets have sent man-made satellites into space. These satellites go around the Earth in orbits of their own. The path of the man-made satellites are between the Earth and the orbit of the moon. Instruments on satellites have sent messages back to Earth. From these messages, scientists have learned many things about outer space. RCA Communications Satellite SATCOM in Earth orbit. Skylab, a manned spacecraft, took this photograph of the sun during a spectacular solar flare at the left, right there. All the planets in our solar system orbit around the sun. Scientists have learned that the sun's rays make things very hot in some parts of outer space. Scientists have found out that things can be very cold in some parts of outer space. They have learned that it is very dark in outer space. They have learned that the sun's rays can be dangerous in outer space. International communication satellites called Intelsat are bigger than ever. The newest and biggest satellite is on the left. The oldest and smallest one is on the far right. They have learned that outer space is silent, a place without sound. What scientists have learned has helped them plan safe ways for people to make trips in outer space. People can travel in outer space. Many questions had to be answered before scientists could send animals and later men into space. The space mural, A Cosmic View by Robert McCall, is on display at the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. Guion S. Bluford, Jr., a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, left, and Sally K. Ride right are space shuttle crew members scheduled for future space missions. Well, now those have been done. Now astronauts have journeyed into space. On each trip, they learn many things. People at the Mission Control Center at the Johnson Space Center oversee all the activities on a spacecraft during its mission. The huge map in the front of the room shows the path the spacecraft is taking as it orbits the Earth. Right there. Scientists have found ways to keep people safe during the takeoff of the rocket ship and during the return to Earth. The space shuttle has been built to travel in and out of space again and again. The space shuttle could be used to carry people, equipment, and supplies to space stations. Above, the view of the space shuttle returning to Earth. Below, an artist drawing based on a scientific studies shows a future space station. Don't think we have any of those yet. The space shuttle will be used to build space colonies. Every day, scientists learn more about outer space. They have found answers to many problems, but they are working on many more of them. A space station or platform may someday be built out in space. In the year 2100, people living in space may build places that look like this mountain valley. These seeds will be made from material taken from the moon and asteroids. Energy would come from the sun, and the entire colony would be enclosed. Remember, there is no oxygen in space. Spaceships or rockets may get more fuel at the space station. Spaceships might be built or put together at the space station. Part of a space colony would be used to grow food. This drawing shows what a space farm might look like. On some levels, there might be food crops such as wheat. Other areas would be used to raise cattle and fish. Scientists are working on new ways of supplying the food, water, and air that would be needed on long trips into outer space. The time may come when much more will be known about traveling at great speeds and building better rockets. Scientists may find new fuels for space travel. They are trying to find a way to use atomic energy in spaceships. Someday, scientists may use power from the sun for space travel. Close-ups of the Challenger spacecraft being built. Some scientists think that all the problems of long space trips can never be overcome. Other scientists believe that the most important problems will be solved in a few years, and that men and women can make long trips safely to outer space. Someday, many of us will travel in and out of outer space and later tell about our trips. So far, I haven't traveled to space. One Man's Lifetime by Roland O. Powell. This painting shows how methods of transportation have changed in the last 150 years. Pictured are the Wright brothers' plane, the Corsair jet, a lunar roving vehicle, Skylab, space station, the American Apollo, the Soviet Soyuz spacecraft, and the space shuttle. The end.